Oh, it's a good question. I'll bring it back up here. Oh, let me just make sure. I just want to make sure I'm sharing my correct screen. It is this one that I want, right? Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so yeah, let's open that up. So um I'm gonna open up CAD and just finish my user interface run through. So I'm gonna open my CAD. You already have CAD loaded on your computer, either it's on the desktop icon or somewhere. Open this thing up. You don't have to sign in. Like I did send you links to sign in. If you already made an account, you can sign in if you want to see if it works. That's fine. I'm not going to pull anything from the online, so I'm not going to sign in pretend today, right now, but you can, and that's where you would sign in here. It's just that I'm not going to be pulling anything from their libraries on there, so I don't really need to worry about signing in. I'm just going to use it as in default mode that it's loaded on my. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, you might be able to cloud save your stuff if you're linked into your cloud here of sorts, whichever cloud you're using. Yeah. Right now, I'm definitely gonna if I do some work today, which we will get to some work here in the next 45 minutes, then I'll definitely want to have my thumb drive ready to save what work I do today. So I've got mine kind of back on the dark screen like yours is. And I think I promised that I would hold on for a minute. I think I promised I'd broadcast to your screen here. Alicia does this a lot. I don't do it as much, but I think I'm gonna start doing it because you can always just minimize. Um, so I should be sending to you now. Yes. Do you only have the one that is the, you only have one of my screens, right? This one that my mouse is on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, the class. Okay. And you should be able to minimize that and shrink that down or put it wherever you want on your own. But it maybe it just helps to have that up because I'm going to be running CAD. It's going to be what's up on the board as well. So, um, yeah, to we talked about the start menu, so I'm going to go into the drawing menu and keep going from there. So how I went into that was I just pushed the plus button here, which is a quick way to create a new drawing. I'm really not specifying a format or anything, so it might not be always the ideal way to start a new drawing here. I may actually want to choose a template. And I think yesterday I talked about there's like four different places I can choose to start a new drawing and from a template. For just for what I'm doing right now, and we'll go back when we actually start our template, we will pick a template file to begin with. But just for me, I'm pushing the plus button here to get into the modeling space as a drawing. So it's going to run in default mode essentially because I didn't really pick a specific template to draw to or anything right here. So really when I've entered this with a plus sign, I'm really in a drawing mode. The units in default on this are in inch units. Um, it might be related to the last thing I had open when I pushed this plus. I'd have to think about that for a minute. But in any sorts, this is probably what yours looks like. What I wanted to talk about, we kind of talked top down. We already covered our quick access toolbar at top, our whole ribbon menu with its different tabs. My files I'm going to keep track of right below the ribbon menu. If I have multiple files open, I can have a lot of files open. I don't think I brought up this little three drop downs here. Another place to start a new drawing, new or open or save or close. So it's like a little quick access there too. I use this one probably the least amount. I feel like I save from the top quick access mostly, but you'll learn whatever way you like to flow through this. We talked about the command line. And anytime I'm in a command and I'm doing stuff, if I keep track of the prompt line down here, sometimes it helps me know what I'm doing. And if I'm having issues with a command, it might be just pay attention to your command line. You might be trying to do something that it doesn't allow you to do. So I like that it has like a little text visual, or it's telling you what's going on here when you're in a command. What I wanted to really point out is the big toolbar at the bottom, the status bar they call it. So the very bottom in mine, I think am I maximized? Yeah, I think I'm maximized. Is the status bar with tons of little different icons, and it's really symbols that we learn, maybe what they look like. After we learn what they do, we kind of learn that that symbol does that. A lot of these status bar icons are associated with the function keys on your keyboard. So a lot of people will use to toggle on between what these little selections do down below. I can sometimes just use a function key on my keyboard to toggle them on and off. So a lot of people use that for different, so for a few, and I will use it for a few different ones. But a lot of times I just use my mouse to point and click on what I need to change down here on my status bar. But what they are is they are a bunch of, they just change the functionality of what's going on here a little bit. And they change, they make it, sometimes they make it easy on you and sometimes they make it hard on you when you're drawing. But what you have access to clear over on the bottom right is another little three bars that is an expandable menu here. I tell you that AutoCAD has such little icons for the, and the power of them are very misrepresented by the size of the icon. Some of this stuff is pretty powerful and it's buried deep in a list somewhere. But if I pull this up, this is kind of like my quick access toolbar on top, that things that are checked on mine are what I have, what I've added to my status bar. And if I uncheck them here, they just kind of pull them away from my status bar. So some people like a simplified status bar only displaying what they immediately need access to. Some people have all the status bar things on and then they just kind of memorize to go turn them on and off. But like I have just kind of I have like a hodgepodge of things kind of turned on, probably for whatever I was using last, and some of them that I do like to keep on. And so I'm not going to go into the definitions of all these, but let's point out a few of them, especially the ones that I have up. Um, so how that works, I'm going to drop this list back down, but so it's all these different items really relate to that list. And if I'm just going to start with what I have open, kind of like left to right here, but when they're gray, or I should say when they're blue, when they're blue, that's when they're active. And if they're grayed out, that means they're turned off. So I have a mix of both. I have some blues that are turned on, and I have some grays that are turned off. And so it's still I have access to them, but like the first one that I have on is the grid. And if I click that on and off, it turns off the grid. And some people might prefer to draw with no grid. I like a grid. It doesn't show up on your print, so it's not a printable grid. It just helps you kind of keep, like, I don't know, helps my eyes keep orientation a little bit in a 2D space. So the next one over that I don't have activated is snap mode. So I might be snapping to the grid, which means my cursor, if I'm in a command, it means that it's going to want me to. Well, I have two different. Let me back up just a minute. I have my grid on. I have my snap on. It's called snap mode. I could turn it on with F9. I like this. If you hover over these icons, it's going to give you this little readout, right? This is super handy. Helps you kind of relate to what the word is for the symbol of what's going on down below. But the snap to polar angle is actually what I have on, because if you, the little drop down menu here is either a polar snap or a grid snap. And if I actually did put this onto grid snap and then I'm in a command, it gets like like when I move around this, you won't have a cursor. Oh yeah, you do have a crosshair, but it won't act like it's snapping to the grid unless you're in a command ready to do something. And I'll just pick line. I always pick it because it's top left first command of this in the ribbon menu. I'll pick line. But then you can see if I'm snapping to grid, it wants to draw. It only wants to be drawing on the grid itself. And the grid is has a specified distance associated with it, which I can change, but I'll show you. We'll get to it down the line a little bit on the status bar. We'll show you where the grid spacing is like specified. But right now, this. A lot of people used to draw like this, I think, back in the day. I do not draw snapping to grid anymore. And I don't think a lot. I mean, there would be reasons why I would, but I say for general drafting that we're gonna, especially this semester, we're gonna do. I'm not gonna snap to grid. It just gets a little bit joggy the way I maneuver through model space. It tends to, because it's going to confine me to the grid. And what I actually had on was like a polar snap, which means I'm going to be able to snap to features like shapes and stuff that I've drawn. I'll be able to snap to those. So I do keep it on in the sense that I'm not like totally toggling it off, which I could. I actually have it toggled on, but I have it on a polar snap instead of a grid snap. The next thing that I have on is my dynamic input, which just means when I'm in a command, my cursor is going to do this. It's kind of going to give me the command line stuff. Like if I look down on my command line, it says specify first point. It also says that at my cursor point, like specify first point. So if I turn off dynamic input, I think I lose like the coordinate. I think I lose the readout on my cursor. Let's just check that. Like I'm in the line command again, because sometimes you have to be in a command to yeah, you have to be in a command to actually see what's going on. let me back up just a little bit. Even though I've entered a command, the way I get out of a command, if I don't want to do it, is I can either select another command or escape. My hand is a lot of the times on escape on the keyboard. Like when I'm in a command, I don't want to do anything with it. I just hit escape and I get out of that command. So escape is your friend. I'm like always hitting escape. Sometimes I choose a command I didn't mean to, escape. I'm into something, escape. I'm done with that command, escape. So I use escape a lot. Get out of those commands. And sometimes I'm in multiple commands. I got to escape my way out of there. So yeah, escapes your friend. But if I turn off dynamic input and I go into that same command, see, I'm in the command, but I don't get the command line prompt. I kind of like it. So I usually leave on my dynamic input and then it looks like that. Gives me the coordinates, gives me other things, gives me a quick, I don't know. My eye looks at that easier. Some people get annoyed by that hanging around with them. It tends to become background to me, but it's helpful when I'm in a command that has multiple options. So the next one over is that I have turned off currently is ortho mode. And so ortho mode, if I turn it on, will actually keep me orthographically aligned. And hopefully maybe we've learned that. We've said the word orthographic projection a lot, but that is really drawing kind of right angles to each other, right? Like the front view is directly lined up with the top view in orthographic projection. They're totally in line with each other. And then the right side view is just off to the right, but everything aligns. So ortho mode is kind of keeping things at right angles to each other. So it's a way to lock your cursor in and only drawing, either horizontally or vertically. That's ortho mode. And so sometimes that's really that is one that I toggle on and off with my function key. It's F8, right? I think it says that when I'm over it. Ortho mode, F8. F8 on, F8 off is a quick key command that I might toggle that on and off if I want to make sure when I'm drawing something that stays perfectly vertical or horizontal. So that is one that I use my function key for. And then polar tracking is going to be, I don't have it on right now, and I should have it on. I usually always have it on. There's not too many reasons why I would have that off. And then the little drop down list next to it kind of explains what it's going to do. What it has is a bunch of readout here, and it's really degrees that I'm looking at. So the tracking settings are like, I mean, like whatever one I have checked is what I will be able to snap these degrees pretty easily. So this is how I stay accurate when I'm doing angled lines to another line. If I need to stay 30 degrees, 45 degrees, I can kind of choose to lock into these degree increments in CAD. And what does my tracking settings say? Oh yeah, anytime you have these, and I'm not going to go, I know I could go deep into all these, but I'm trying to just do the flyover of this. So we'll get back to how that kind of functions and why I might change this when we start drawing a little bit. And it toggles on with what is it like F10 but I generally keep it on. I'm surprised it's off. The next one that I have over, which you may not, if you don't have all these that I have on, it's just because they're not checked over here and added to the status bar. So the next one that I have on would be an isometric drafting. So this is how I draw kind of 3D objects in 2D space. Like if I just click this on, my grid is going to change. It actually becomes kind of angled. You can't see it probably on the upper projector, but you might see it on my projected screen. That it's allowing me to start to draw an isometric drawing on a 2D. And we get to this towards the end of the semester. We start doing isometric drawings, being able to add them to our orthographic projection drawings. So I'm going to turn that off. I can either have the projection plane go left, right. That is just this ISO draft. Yeah, I can choose either top, right, or left. And I usually have to toggle between all these while I'm drawing in 2D space with something that's 3D. I'm kind of like, it's not that I choose one and leave it on and draw it all. I actually bounce around depending on where I want to put my drawing on which plane. It's kind of like it's jumping me from plane to plane. So then we have a super important one that is object snap tracking. So like really, without this one turned on, this little angular object snap tracking, sometimes I have a hard time aligning to features of one object to another, and if my snap tracking is not on. So that one I usually always leave on, object snap tracking. Then here is the things object snap is what the parts of an object that I can snap to. So this one I always have on too, but what I sometimes change is what parts of an object I can snap to. And if I bring up the little drop down menu here, it has all these weird words that we don't maybe know what it is, but and then it also is like when I have them checked here, what I'm going to get is these features that show up that I can snap to on objects. So I can snap to endpoints of lines. I can snap to midpoints of lines. I can snap to centers of things like a circle. It shows geometric center of a lot of various shapes that don't have to be a circle, but do have a center. A node is kind of this like weird little thing that is really hard to see in the model space, but I do create nodes sometimes when I divide lines. I create nodes, or if I do an array, I might create nodes. Quadrants of circles are helpful to be able to snap to. Intersection points of lines, extensions. Okay, insertion. I don't know. Some of these I may sometimes toggle off because it can get a little busy when you go to like snap a line to an object that you've drawn, like a line to a circle. I might get an array of snaps that are available, and sometimes I have to turn them off so I get the one I want. But perpendicular, tangent, nearest. So I have a lot of functionality built into CAD that will allow me to hook to something. And even if I zoom way in, I can see that it's hooked correctly. So, what else was I going to say about this? These two are really related. I like that they're together on the status bar, the snap tracking versus the object snaps. The snap tracking settings, we'll talk about that one a little bit later, but I have the line like show hide line weights. I could probably turn that one off. I could almost probably remove it from my list. It's not one that I turn on very often, but when we specify line weights and line types, or specifically line weights, I can have those line weights show up in my model and kind of look at them so I get an idea of how it's going to plot to print. I generally keep those off so all my line weights kind of look the same. And we'll talk and how I differentiate lines is generally by color and by like the type of line, because it's kind of like when I draw in CAD. I'm not going to draw. I don't like to draw with the line weights because line weights are just the thickness of the lines, is what those are. So it's hard to snap on lines that have a thickness associated with them. So I generally don't, in my model space, I generally do not like to turn on the line weights and draw with them because they make it awkward. And we can play around with this when we have a drawing to work with. But the next thing I have is 3D stuff. I could technically remove that from my view because I'm not doing any 3D now, but I probably have it up because towards the end of the semester, I was probably doing some 3D stuff. And then a dynamic UCS, I have that on. Let's see, gizmos. These are to do with 3D stuff. These little pinwheel items are really important. What they say is show annotation objects and add scales. Hey, we just talked about scales. Add scales to annotative objects when the annotation scale changes. What this is some like what you might already think about from just working with scales is when you scale a drawing, it's all great and dandy. Like I need a house to fit on paper, so I scale it to fit on paper. But we don't scale our text to where if I want my text to be legible on the print and the drawing, right? So the ASME standard print size that should show up on my print is eighth of an inch text, 0.125 Arial, 0.125 text style. Height is our text height. That's what we like to be as the finished product on our drawings. All of our dimensions should kind of be like 0.125 in height. Any text that I would have added to a leader line or a description of something should be 0.125. There are some reasons I would break that rule. If I have a big note that I want to stand out, I would kind of double the size of that text to a 0.2 size. It should be 0.25, but I think ASME calls it a 0.2 size text. Double the size of a normal text size. So really, the text on my drawing, when I finish, no matter what scale I've had to do to my actual object on my drawing, I want the annotation to be legible at that either 0.2 or 0.125 size on a finished print. So what CAD has is it kind of has an automatic thing. If I do my text correctly, which does take, you have to think, I'll have to show you how to do this. But if you actually input your text correctly in your model space, it'll have this annotative function to where it will apply those scales to my text so that my text remains the correct height, but I can try different scales of my object to fit it on my paper. And so these little pinwheel items have to be on in order to do that. The other thing you don't ever want to change, even though it's available to change this in model space, I don't want the way I operate as a drafter is I always model in one-to-one space. And I have this one turned on. It's the annotation scale of the current view. Let me see if that's like one here that you may or may not have on. It says annotation scale, I think. If I turn that off, it goes away. But if you don't have that one showing up, I like to keep that one on. I just don't adjust it from being one to one. Like technically, I can apply scales to the model space. I'm in model space, the black grid. I can apply scales to that and actually scale and in the model space. But we do not do that as drafters. We model one to one and we scale on paper. So I always leave that one to one. I like it up, so I'm always verified that I am one to one in case something got bumped. What I have some more settings here. Oh, this is another way. I think I told you on the quick access toolbar. That's how you toggle between. This is way up top on the left that I am now. But that's how you toggle between 3D and 2D drawing. Drafting and annotation is what we want to be on. There's another way to change that on a settings way down on the status bar is where I could also change that. So it's duplicate. A lot of commands are duplicated all over the place in CAD. And then what do I have? My annotation monitor, that's something I use on my drawing sometimes. I'll get to that later. Because I'm having my drawing like scale because I'm applying some automated scale going on in my drawings from model space to drawings. Some things can get out of whack, and this little monitor is kind of like a little check system that says, oh, it'll like bring and it'll bring up an exclamation point when things are not jiving from model space to paper space or something. So I have it turned off right now. And then what else do I have? I don't know. I have a quick properties mode. I don't always use that. Maybe I think it allows me to like right click on stuff and get to a quick properties though. When I'm in a command. The other two, I don't even think I'm going to isolate objects. I don't think I use. I could remove some of these from. Okay. That is the status bar. It gets pretty big. Mine is pretty large. Actually, I had a lot more icons on here than I thought. But so from time to time, you might be struggling. I might be like, oh, you need to add that to your status bar, and then you need to turn it on. So, like I said, some people will add all these on there. I have a few turned off. There's a few that I probably could turn off. Okay. You can see that yesterday I had my cursor black, but now I have it white. So let's look at some of the options. Let's look at the options menu in CAD. And this is where, like, if you work for a design engineering department, there might be someone that is like customizing some of the options and then saving that. And where you would get to what's been maybe changed in that is at the upper left in the drop down there. This is another one that's super buried and hidden, but it's super powerful place to access changes is the options tab from here. You don't get it from the start menu, but in the model space, you'll get the options tab. And so I'm going to go clear down here, options. It seems like it's buried and hidden, but it's pretty powerful. And it should bring up really your setting options for this program. So this is like the main options programmable, like program the program. This is, if I say that, I kind of mean like getting into this area a little bit. But so it just has, I don't know, the first one is files. It might be where I'm going to pull some files from, add some files. We don't manipulate the files too much here. A lot of this probably came in with the program when it downloaded, where it stored the files that it's going to be accessing. But if someone was in charge of the template files on the server for a company, they may choose to like add a location for those template files right here. My display tab here is where I really get to, I'm on dark mode right now, which really is everything dark, right? And what I found is kind of hard to see when I'm drawing and what I'm clicking on. So I run mine on light mode. You don't have to. You can keep yours dark if you like it. It's fine. What it does, if I change to light, I'll apply it. And when I did my video yesterday, it was really like this. It mostly adds light to my ribbon menu. I've just found that's actually the only reason why I do this is because maybe it's easier to see if somebody's looking at the board, see what command I might be selecting up here. That's the only reason why. And then down here, like maybe these are all defaults. I haven't changed anything default here. What else was I going to show? Just the color changes that you can like this. So on display, color theme only really changes just kind of the ribbon menu. But down here in colors is where you get another expandable menu. So we're like in a menu now. This is going to be common in CAD. You're going to drive down into menus like continuously, it seems like. And it opens up this little dialog box right here. I'll move it over maybe so I can see it a little better. This is where I can actually change colors. I would encourage you, if you do change colors, like take a screenshot of this, because I think the default color is this, right? Like this is 2D model space. The context is 2D model space. What I'm looking at changing maybe is if I want to change my background from dark to light. Uh, I think the default is 33, 40, 48, which is a really odd kind of color. It's not just black. If you choose black, it's really black. This has a bit of a gray tone to it in default, I believe. So I would encourage you to like keep track of this if you're going to change it. I use my model space color just as the default color. I'm just used to it. I've seen people change it though, so it's like there might, I think there's things some people's eyes might like a different color than not, but either way, what else can I change here is the crosshairs. Like the number two thing I can change color of is crosshairs. I went from white to black. It's hard to see like if I'm hard to see my crosshair yesterday it was on black and I don't even remember changing it to black. I'm not sure why it was black. So I don't know why I would have done that. But not that you couldn't. You can change it to whatever color you would want. I think default is white though. Is that what your colors are? White on your crosshair? Yeah, they're white. Okay, viewport control, major grid lines. So I have tons of color options if you're going to customize this. My problem is if you customize this and they wipe the computer, I think it just goes back into the default settings unless you're going to save like your preferences and then like reload those preference files. But you know, that's usually what your IT people do at companies. Okay, so I'm not really doing any changes here. I just want to show you this is where I can change specific colors. So cancel that. Right there under colors is where that is. I can change my crosshair size. I think default is 5, but I guess can get really big. Why people might change that, like let me just up this a little bit and then say apply. And then I'm going to close this. I'll get right back in. Why people might change this is kind of using it strategically as an orthographic projection type helpful tool. I don't do this, but I can see why somebody might. I've watched videos where people are doing this with a big crosshair for orthographic alignment, but it's just a bit obtuse for me. So I'm going to go to 5. I think I just run that to default 5. Change stuff, just hit apply. What else do I want to point out in here? I think it shows like how often it'll save here. Yeah, I'm on the open and save tab. Right now, I think this might be default. The automatic save is going to be every 10 minutes between saves. So um, that's good. Should put you only 10 minutes out of work if you forgot to save. Anything else I want to show here? It's showing save as. It's going to want to save as a 2018 drawing DWG file. I could, if I was always saving a different file type, but this might be something that I would change in the settings. Um, Plot and publish. We'll set that up a little bit. I have mine hooked to my computer. I'm not sure if your guys' is, but might. I think I'll save on this, or I mean, I'll just move on from this one. What is system? I don't think anything that I'm going to mess with here. User preferences. Double click editing, shortcut menu. Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, here's like, I guess this is an insertion scale. This is not necessarily the units that it's drawing in. This is specific to the insertion scale. Default settings when units are set to unitless. Yeah, this is if you brought in something as a reference and it didn't know what it was. It's going to insert, like it's going to interpret those as inches that are coming in if the units are not specified on something coming in. So that's kind of misleading that you think that's what it's going to change, maybe what you're drawing in, but let me go through the next one. We can change like our auto snap marker size. What else can we change? Aperture size. Okay. I don't think I've changed anything from default here. 3D modeling won't apply to what we're doing right now, so leave it. Selection, pitch box size. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the display is maybe the most used tab that I use in here if I'm changing something, but really, I just wanted you to look through this options menu and know where it is. It's hidden right here, but it's ultra powerful. And it is changing it's programming your program a little bit. So people do get user preferences and they do make changes here. Uh, so that's that. That's the end of that. Good. And now, like to wrap this little section up, I just wanted to go through the commands that we might use to start drawing. So I just want to go through the ribbon menu and start using some stuff. Not everything. Let's just get some general command and then the way I drive around this space a little bit. So a couple things with your mouse that I wanted to show you is that I think I told you that a lot of times, like I zoom in and zoom out here, and all I do is I scroll with my wheel there, right? This is me mouse scrolling, like scroll towards, scroll away, towards, away. Yes, this is good. I think you can change that in the settings if you want it to be reverse. So I think even the settings on my mouse are changeable, but default is definitely just going to be your scroll in, scroll out. Um, what else do I do? Oh, I can pan, which is if I right click. Right click is how I do a lot of commands in CAD. But if I right click and hold, I think I can pan if I had something up. So let me just drop a circle real quick. Center radius circle, sure. And then if I click and pan, oh, maybe sorry, it's my mouse scroller wheel. That's what it is. Sorry. The same one that I scroll with, if I just click it and hold, is how I can pan around. So I'll delete my circle. And now I know I just click and hold. I can actually where I can see the UCS X and Y coordinate, I can move around. If I zoom way out and I'm like way out in space, I know my grid looks like it's changing. And if I need to like get back to something that I've lost it way off screen, double click the mouse wheel. So just double click. It's like a zoom. It's like a zoom all or a zoom extents. So whatever you have drawn, if you do have stuff drawn way out in the universe somewhere of the model space universe, zoom will only work when things are uh, so if it seems like when you double clicked on it and you had drawing stuff out there, it's going to zoom all, meaning it's going to capture anything that you would have had way out there in a weird spot. And so if it still looks like things are way out there or weird, it means that maybe you need to delete some stuff that you didn't mean to put way out there if your zoom all doesn't work. Yeah, go ahead. Double true, true. It's like a zoom extent. Yeah, you'll see like everything you've ever put on there, right? So if you have a little thing, it'll zoom way into that little thing. If you've drawn a big thing, it might, zoom it way out. Yeah, it's a quick little way to be like zoomed in and zoom out if you want to go back out to everything to show everything that you've drawn. Yeah, kind of a zoom extents. I feel like we get lost. Like when we're first messing with CAD, we might get lost in the universe somewhere, and double click your mouse wheel will get you there. Yes. So that's my mouse wheel stuff. My right click and left click kind of function as normal right click, left clicks. My other commands I'm going to use is my enter button and my escape button a lot on my keyboard when I'm in a command. So let's like mess around with some of these. Lines are simple lines, so creates a straight line segment. So these are expandable too. So there is more functions that are associated with draw in this little drop down list. And if you just hover over them, even though we get used to the hieroglyphics and we start to know which the symbol I'm looking for when I'm drawing, but some of them aren't explained as well. Like these, I have to hover over to get what they actually are. One that we might use sometime point is maybe divide is one that we might use on occasion. Yeah. So line. So these are just things like drawing is drawing. So I feel like I use the draw panel to create stuff. And then once I've created stuff, I use the modify panel to modify stuff. And yeah, and to move it and to modify it. So my line command, I simply um, click on line and I'm in the command. What I also want to show you, let me go back to my course for a minute. I think I loaded another document. I'm into our resources for this lab right here. So the resources for AutoCAD, I think I showed yesterday, it's a pretty good list of documents, bunch of templates mostly. But what I added was this AutoCAD keyboard shortcut guide. So some people just really get used to the keyboard inputs. So I uploaded this. It's just a document from Autodesk website. That's from 2024. I don't think the shortcuts they're probably continually adding to this. But I mean, it's printable, so you can print this off if you want to here too. But I like this first page for sure. This is maybe the most pertinent stuff that you might do and use as a shortcut. Are definitely our function keys. You can see they're all red at the top here. And they will, I think F8's one that I use a lot. F9 I might use, but definitely F8 I use that toggle ortho mode on. But all the function keys have a different function in CAD. And then the actual just letter inputs, some of them are more used than others, right? Like L for line. So really I can choose my command from the ribbon menu, or I could just type in L for line and so forth. So I think this first page is maybe the most common one someone might use. Lines. Oh, I don't know what else, but yeah, single letter inputs are going to bring up these commands. Let's see. Then we start to add like control plus some of those will do different functions. So your control key, along with a letter key, has other quick access functions. So what this is 11 pages. You have to memorize all of these by Monday, and we're gonna take a test on them. Hell no, you can't. I don't know. There's so many commands. People get good with what they use regularly is essentially what it becomes. You just you start to develop a workflow between probably ribbon menu clicking and keyboard inputs. You come up with a flow that works because it does, extra clicking is time, and there is no doubt there are fast drafters out there. They will blow your mind. Some of them that have been in the industry a long time and have done the same repetitive things over and over. Oh, they're incredible. But it's just because they've developed a workflow through repetition. So yeah, there's three button or three key stuff. Sometimes when you just type, like if I just type in L, I think I'll get some of the L commands if I go down through here. What other L commands are there in this list? The first one that comes up will be line, but you might get it might I think it already populates a little drop down of the other things that you might do for L, like layer or layer state. And so anyway, how we would use like a keyboard function. So anyway, I want to point out this document. It's deep. It's pretty, and then they have different ones for every program. So they'll have a keyboard glossary like this, shortcut guide for every program. And like I said, across, when you jump to Revit, there might be a few changes. When you jump to Inventor, the keyboard inputs are going to change a little bit. Some of them might be similar, some of them might be a little bit different. So something you might have been like really proficient at in CAD using keyboard shortcuts, you might jump into Inventor and be like, well, that doesn't do that anymore. What does that do? And you kind of have to relearn a little bit, but the keyboard shortcuts are a real thing and people love them. So let me just show how one would work back over to CAD. If I do, instead of choosing a line here, I can just type L. Then you can see if I just type L and hesitate for a minute, the first one is line. So if I did L and enter's your friend in how you would, I know it's how we enter a command. Like especially when I'm using keyboard inputs, it might be L enter, or you might choose to scroll down through here. Because my hand, the way I think this is funny to talk about, like how my hands are on this in relation to when I'm driving this thing. So what's important is, yeah, my right hand's obviously, or if you're left-handed, my right hand's always on my mouse, ready to right click, left click, scroll. So that hand is always occupied by my mouse. So I'm always able to like jump my left hand over the keyboard, and I just kind of like, it's like a monkey finger my keyboard. I use my hand like as if I was anyway. I'm using one hand for everything I got to do on my keyboard a lot of times, right? So it's not home row style, right? I'm like all over this keyboard. And but yeah, it would be like L enter. So my hand is, I feel like on my keyboard, my hand is a lot going back between like enter and escape and across, and sometimes a keyboard, a function key here or there. Um, but yeah, like L, enter, I would be in the line command because it's the first one in the drop down list. L is the first one that shows up. So if I hit enter, it's in that normal line command. If I do like an L, T, line type is what comes up first. And if I enter that, I'd be into a line type command. So it's kind of how those keyboard input commands work. And like I said, from that list, you can see it's a pretty vast array of shortcut key commands. What I also want to tell you about your keyboard is I keep my num lock on. Like a lot of times my number inputs, I am using the little the little 10 keypad. And I will use that with both my hands. I feel like sometimes I break away from my mouse and I type in with my right hand on the numlock keyboard. And some people are really good with 10 key. I'm kind of crappy, but I do put all of my number inputs. I use that. I use the 10 keypad, not the numbers across the top of the keyboard. Like that's kind of like reaching way over. Not that you can't, but I feel like I put my numlock on always, and that's usually where my numbers are being entered in. So yeah. It's a num lock. The num lock. Yeah, you got to have it on. Oh, yeah. Isn't it funny that the things that others know and don't? Yeah, it's funny that these little simple things are funny. Yeah, I agree. So you got to turn on your num lock. I will use my left hand on the 10 keypad a lot too, just because, like I said, my left hand's all over the keyboard. So sometimes that's where I'm putting in my numbers. But a lot of times, I feel like I'm more active. It's just me. I break away from my mouse and I enter with my right hand. Maybe I feel like I'm a little bit better on a 10 key with my right hand than my left hand. Probably because it's always been associated with the right side of the keyboard. But either way, I tend to break my hand away from my mouse for the num key or the 10 key a little bit. The reason why I'm not a huge keyboard input fan is because I think I told you I really entered industry, not, 98% of my time was an inventor. And what I wanted to show you, what the other thing you have on your table is a freaking 3D mouse. That's that other thing that's on your left that your left hand may hold at times. That's a 3D mouse. They are like, they didn't have those in this lab until I came because I am handicapped without a 3D mouse. You don't use it much in CAD the way we're going to do now because it's not in 3D. We're drawing 2D. But when you go to a 3D program, now my hands totally break away from the keyboard. I still have to do inputs from the keyboard and break a hand away from the mouse, but usually in a 3D environment. So let me go to my 3D, like I have this up in 3D. This is Inventor. This is where we'll be in second semester. This is a screw conveyor, and it's not finished yet, but I've got a lot of parts associated with this. Um, but see what I am doing to rotate around this, I'm using my 3D mouse here. So the way I actually rotate in a 3D world is I use that 3D mouse in my left hand, and my right hand is on my mouse. This allows me to like just continually roll this object around to like zoom in with my 3D mouse, look at stuff really closely, back out. I use my ribbon menu with my other mouse to do commands here. So I feel like just what me being like, I could say I grew up in a 3D program. I am not used to always having my hand on the keyboard. I'm used to having my hand on two different, and I'm used to like using the ribbon menu when I've always got my hand on my 3D mouse. So that's like, if I think of why I would not be like a keyboard shortcut user, it's because, and I would still have to break a hand away from one of the mice to do my keyboard inputs, which is why I end up being like a point and click more in a 3D program. I'm driving this mouse to select commands. I'm driving this mouse to decide what I'm doing with what and rotating and looking at specific things. Yes. So anyway, we'll get to that. But once you use a 3D mouse, you'll never go back to driving with the function key again. I guarantee it. I won't. I can't. It's inseparable. It's like losing an appendage. So when I came in here, nobody had them. I'm like, oh, this will not do. And then when you guys go to use them, you'll hate them for a while, actually. So anyway, so I'm gonna go back to CAD. I just wanted to kind of explain the ergonomics and maybe how my hands are. I think that's something I don't explain well, and I just drive, and then I come around to you guys, and you're kind of clumsy, and I'm like, oh, you should. There is some ergonomics, I think, here, and that actually, if you're using it right, it kind of does speed up your work a little bit. But I cannot hold a candle to a master of CAD will whip me with key commands in a rapid hurry. So I do say I'm not the fastest drafter, but I am an accurate drafter. But definitely speed is, something I can work on too. Okay, so let's do so line is just line. I click on line or I enter line. It wants me to specify a first point. I'm just out here in no man's land, and I can do a line. And what comes up when I do a line because I have my object snap tracking on, you'll see these green lines show up, and that's that polar tracking that can be turned on or off. And right now, why the polar tracking is picking up other things is because the way I programmed it to say, pick me up 30-degree increments, pick me up 60-degree increments, and 90. So really, the coarseness of what I can snap and track to is defined by my polar tracking. So let me turn off that and show what it looks like differently. So this is me with the functionality that I like to have on. I've got dynamic input on. I've got polar snap tracking on. And I've got some particular increments set. So let me turn those off. Where those are is on your status bar down here. And I can just turn off those tracking. So if I turn off this one, object snap tracking, let's turn this off and let's turn off. Maybe that's all I have to do. Let me look at my line now. I still have my polar tracking that will pick up those. So you don't see much there. Nothing really changed because I don't have any objects I'm trying to snap to. But if I turn this one off, which would be F3 or click this off. Oh, wait, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm actually gonna turn off this one, the circle with the little angle in it, polar tracking. Let me turn that one off. Now I shouldn't get any I don't get those green lines to show me like if I'm perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal. I don't get that. I don't get any angular help at all. So that's because I've turned off this particular polar tracking. If I turn that back on and I do my line again, here I can be perfectly horizontal, perfectly vertical, and then those 30, 60, 90-degree increments. If I don't like those degree increments, I can change that. Like right here in this drop down, man. Maybe I need to be, 15 30s or 10 20s, 30s. I will check this and then go back and do that same line command. And now I can actually do every 10-degree. It'll just snap to that. It'll allow me to be like perfectly accurate to those those degree settings there. So that's the look of like polar snap tracking, I guess. Yeah. Polar tracking, I think is just what it's called. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's a line. So a line can do a line. So let's see here. Let's see, like a line can do a line. It wants the first point, then you have to click to enter the second point. Then it's really made to like keep you in the command. It intuitively knows you want to go to maybe another point to a point. So when you're in the line command, it's just going to be this continual command that I can do. And I can just make any kind of shape. Because I have polar snap tracking on, if I want this line to be as long as that line below me, I can actually go hover over it for a second and then pull away from it, and it'll pull up that green line. It's like an object snap track. And that allowed me to like actually make that distance of line the same as the bottom line. So I'm actually using that polar tracking, that snap tracking to sometimes get things in alignment here. I'm just going to click down here and close this thing out. But it'll continually keep doing this until I escape. And so or I think I can press enter. So enter and escape sometimes work at the end of a command. So if I hit enter, it just means I'm done with that command. Now here's the thing. Once I'm there and if I want to actually just do another line, I don't have to go back and select line. I can hit enter to re-enter that last command that I just did. So if I hit enter, it knows I'm going to use the last command I just did. I don't always do that. Sometimes I'm always just going back and clicking line or whatever. But if I was doing a lot of repetitive motion, if I just hit enter, yeah, it's like back into that same command. So I'm back in a line command here. What else I want to show you? The next one over is a polyline, which is just a more complex line. And it probably will become how you draw more, I'd say a little later in the semester or whatever. It's like I'll show you the difference here. Like now that I've drawn something, this is a random line shape that I made. I did make it all connect, but when you go over and hover over it, if you go to like select this, you'll see that it's all just single line segments. I know they are joined. If I like zoom way in on this, so I'm like zooming in with my wheel. They are perfectly joined because I never did like exit the command. So when I picked up another line, they are perfectly joined here. There is no gap or separation. I just wanted to zoom in and show you that. If you zoom way in like this and you're like, okay, I got to get back out, you can double click that and that will zoom out to your extents. At least that shows. I mean, it makes your object fill the entire, whatever you've drawn fills the entire model space. So I have to maybe zoom out a little bit here. Oh yeah, if I zoom in here, you can see I didn't actually close that object. Even though it looked like I snapped and closed on it, I didn't. If I zoom in here, I can see I didn't. So it's an individual line segment, so I can actually like select it. And then it has grips, what we call grips on it. Like a line generally will have these grips, end grips and a midpoint grip. And you can grab that and move it. Like this grip, when it goes red, means I've actually grabbed it. And it's not going to let me, like if I grab the center grip, it's going to allow me to like pull the whole line, wherever. And so a red grip is an active grip that I've chosen to select. Whenever you do something you didn't want to do, this will be your friend up here. It's this little undo button, this one, undo, or control what? Z. Yeah, some people like control Z as this keyboard shortcut for undo. But you either have the option to like click this little thing up top, undoes. It'll undo every command you ever did. So your zoom in, zoomed out, there's where I went back to normal there. You might hit a point sometimes where undo just stops. Like there is a limitation to how far it can undo sometimes. And sometimes you can redo though. If the command is able to be redone, you could redo it. Right now, I don't have the option to redo anything. It's just not something that's available. So it's like grayed out. But yeah. What I could do here is I could grab this grip and grip it down to here. And maybe now I've got this closed unit. But that's what I want to show you is with this line, even though I drew kind of a connected shape, it's all individual line segments. So I'm going to draw the same shape with a polyline and look at the difference here. So I'm going to choose polyline. And maybe I'm going to line it up with this one so I have that snap tracking on. So I can actually kind of hover over maybe this. If you guys are having any trouble doing this, it might just be that you don't have the correct object snaps on, total selectable menu. And maybe you don't have your object snap tracking on or your polar tracking. I generally am keeping all of my snaps on, object snaps on, object snap tracking, my polar tracking. They're all kind of working together for me here to create these alignment things. So I'm going to draw another shape with a polyline. I don't know what the command is for polyline. Probably PL, polyline. PL is polyline for your keyboard command, but it's the same as clicking up here. I'm going to line it up with this, which means I'm going to hover over this and then I'm going to pull away and I should get like a snap tracking. Should. I don't know. Yeah, like that. Sometimes if it didn't do it, I just had to exit the command, re-enter the command, and there it is. Kind of maybe. Yeah, it's like sometimes it won't track. So if I re-enter the command, I escaped and re-entered. There it shows up. And that's just going to help me keep some alignment. I use that for orthographic projection alignment sometimes. So right now the bottoms are kind of aligned. I'm going to draw roughly the same shape. It's not to any dimensions whatsoever. But if I want to line up the top, maybe I'll hover over here for a second and then come back. And that line should show up. That shows me that I'm going to be perfectly in line and at the same dimension there. And maybe I'm going to go to this one now. When you have a shape that you're trying to close to, you can just hit C for close. The reason why is because if I look at my command line down below, it's not on my dynamic input on my cursor, but if I look at my command line, a polyline has so many more functionality than a simple line. It can be turned into an arc. It can either close, can do a half width, a length, undo, and width. So I can change a lot with a polyline. And what I'm looking at is my command line and all those little bracketed words and the blue letter in front of them. That is an option I have to go into. It's like an option on my command. It's like a command option. So C for close is just going to like close this thing. C, enter. Now I know that if I zoomed in on this, it's actually closed and I wouldn't have any problem. What this did too, the difference in a polyline is, like I said, if I come over here and click on one of these lines, it shows them as separate line segments. If I do the same thing on my polyline shape, it should just all light up as one. It does. So it's like a joined unit. It's like a polyline will, like when I'm making shapes, will make a joined shape. So therefore, to me, it becomes like a better option sometimes when I'm making a geometric shape that I want it to be closed. I want it to be like a closed shape. I need to make sure everything's connected. I want it to be this joined unit. Polyline might be my better option. And yeah. And then I'm just going to slightly, and that's about all the time we have today. It's funny how long it takes just to get going. But what I'm going to go through, I'll probably upload the videos on the rest and we won't do them in class. I think I'm going to start drawing in the morning. I'm going to do math and we're going to jump into template and doing some drawing tomorrow. But I think I'm going to make a video that I'm going to post later today, since class is over. And I'm going to go through these commands in a little bit quicker. I'm going to do circle on arcs, rectangles. I'm going to skip hatching and ellipses. I'm probably not going to go into too much of the sub list. And then I might do a video where I modify those using move, rotates, mirrors, trims, and erase, trim and extend. Yeah, I'm going to show you fillet and chamfer. So I'm going to make a video that I'll post. And I don't need to worry about annotations yet. So I'm not going to annotate anything for a minute. And then we need to worry about layers. So yeah, I'm going to post some videos, but I'm going to call class done today. But I do want you to check back later today probably and look for some videos that I posted on how to set up layers, how to run through some of these other commands. And then we'll be ready to rock and roll with a drawing tomorrow, actually. So how you erase, I'll do that really quick, is you have a couple options. I'm not in a command at all, but if I click from the left to right, it opens up this blue window. In order for this thing to work for you as an erase, it's kind of like it's like a fencing system that's going on here. In order for if it's a blue shade, in order for it to do any deleting, it has to encompass the entire thing that you've drawn. So you can see that nothing is highlighting here when I'm over it. But if I come over to this and the whole thing, I can actually choose the whole thing. So this is like a crossing window, but in order to use the blue function, it needs to be grabbing the entire thing. If I do that and only grab this, it'll only grab what was totally enclosed in it. So this won't grab anything because it's a polyline. If I go the other direction, it's partial. So if I go this way and over, it's green. It means I can grab just a little bit and it'll take the whole thing that I was touching. So for here, all I gotta do is grab that to grab that whole object. If If I just wanted this line, I can come in here and grab it. You can also lasso with it. So the same way, if I click and hold, I can kind of do this like strategic lasso, which really gets weird. It starts to be subtractive and additive of itself. But like sometimes I just want to come in here really accurately and maybe just grab a little part. I can lasso it to delete it, maybe. Delete that. Yeah. And I can do this too as well, but I would have to capture the whole thing. So if I use the blue lasso, that's not going to grab anything there. But if I grab the whole part, it will grab that. So and then delete is delete. So if I wanted to actually delete this, select it, delete. Delete is delete. I use delete a lot. I use enter, delete, and escape a lot on my keyboard for sure. Let's call that good. Yeah, I like it.